I would like to try to explain to you what Mercury retrograde means. If you were to go outside during a Mercury retrograde period, okay, and look up in the night sky and find the planet Mercury and watch it for about a week or so, it would appear to you that it was moving backwards. And that's what retrograde means. It's going backwards. The planet is not actually moving backwards. It just appears that way. And daily motion of each planet is calculated and tracked using degrees, minutes, and seconds. And each planet enters at 0 degrees a zodiac sign. And as it orbits, it moves like a degree or two a day, or maybe not at all, depending on the planet and how far it is or close to our sun. Anyway, it will, as it moves forward, it will increase in degrees and go all the way up to the 29th degree, where it has nowhere else to go but the next zodiac sign, starting at 0 degrees. It will, and that's how it gets around the zodiac, more or less. Just starts at 0 degrees, goes up to 29, and then moves into the next zodiac sign. However, during retrograde motion, the planet decreases in degrees, so it declines. It goes back and forth. When it turns direct again, it will increase in degrees and move forward in direct motion, and again move into the next zodiac sign. But as I said, when it's retrograde, if you have a planet that's being affected, a personal planet in your chart that's being affected by a Mercury retrograde period, it will, in direct motion, touch that planet in aspect, and then retrograde it's like a car driving forward and then putting her in reverse and just running back over that sensitive point, and then going in direct motion again, putting her in drive and going forward again. So depending on what aspect you might have from a Mercury or any planet that's retrograde, that's why some things seem to reoccur in your chart. The same thing or the same issue may come back during a retrograde period of any planet, not just Mercury. But anyways, in general, the traits of, there's so many, but the traits that are mainly associated with the planet Mercury are communications and travel. So when this planet is in retrograde motion, those areas affect everybody. It's like, in general, not a good time to sign a contract or go into an agreement of any kind, just because when you're discussing what you feel is really important, you believe that the person you're discussing this with understands clearly what you mean. And they might, but you have to be extremely specific. If you absolutely must sign a contract or must enter an agreement at this time, make sure you really, really lay it out. Because when Mercury usually goes direct again, you usually find that you assume that this person knew that that point was really important to you, and it's not part of the agreement. You usually have to go over, redo something or other, and it's just because, not that information is being kept from you, but it's just not there for some reason. Sometimes it really isn't available, and you have to, make your choice based on whatever knowledge you have at present time. But then when Mercury goes direct again, you get a little bit more information. You're like, well, if I would have known that, then I would have waited, or I would have added this to the agreement. So that's really the only reason. I mean, a lot of times you can't wait until Mercury goes direct again to sign a contract or make an agreement. So, there are times where you can't wait. You just have to do it. So that's the thing, is to be extremely specific, okay? As for travel, and this is like for everybody, it will affect you differently depending on what house is happening in your chart. But in general, travel is usually kind of mixed up. If you're driving, you usually end up sitting in traffic for a long period of time. Just trying to get from point A to B is, directions are either screwed up or your road's cut off or something. It's a route you take all the time, and then all of a sudden, you're rerouted somewhere else. Also, flying at this time, you know, air travel, any kind of travel, actually. If you're making reservations, really, you know, like I said again, be extremely specific and make sure you check on your flight or your bus or train fare, whatever. A lot of times things change before you go to leave, to board anywhere. You know, you leave your house to go catch that plane. I mean, obviously you would call the airport anyway. Most people, you know, would, but a lot of people don't. They just assume everything's fine. But it's probably a really good idea to check ahead on any kind of travel plans that you're taking during a Mercury retrograde period. Also, regular mail, even the mail that comes by the U.S. Postal Service, could be delayed. And if you are mailing something that is really important, I would mail it priority mail or certified mail, something like that, something that you can track, because you really don't have any proof that letter or that bill or whatever it is arrived. And at this time, you might actually need it. Even if you hear from the person and they say, oh, yeah, I got it, you know, it depends on what the mail was that you were sending, how important it is. It is probably a really good idea to have that backup proof, that piece of paper that says, yes, I did mail this on this day, and blah, blah, blah. And the same thing with email. Email, when you send, make sure, check your send folder, make sure it really did go, and make sure it went to the person that you wanted it to go to. And also incoming mail, make sure you check your spam folder, because regular mail that you would normally be getting with no problems at all could possibly end up in your spam folder, and you'll never see it unless you check that folder. It just might end up somewhere else. Another thing, it's a good idea to hold off on buying any kind of like electronics, even though electronics, anything like that, is usually associated with the planet Uranus. During this time, though, the workings of the object are kind of affected by Mercury, and usually, like especially like a cell phone or even your landline, any form of communication is really affected by this. It's screwed up. It's slowed down. It doesn't make any sense, or appears to not make any sense. So if your cell phone isn't working, and it normally does, that could be possibly due to the Mercury retrograde period. But another thing, though, why it's good not to buy electronics or anything, even an appliance or anything at all, like a big ticket item, is because when Mercury goes direct, you know, that thing goes on sale or something for some reason, or you find out that the reason you bought it, that you specifically bought that thing, and then you go to use it, it doesn't do, or it doesn't act the way you know, the very reason you bought it for. It's good for all these other things, but the specific thing that you wanted this thing for, it doesn't do what you wanted it to. So, whatever. I'm trying to think of what else. That's pretty much it. Our Mercury retrograde period is coming up in September. Actually, Mercury went retrograde on August 30th, and it will be retrograde until September 23rd, 2016. And check your monthly forecast with me, and I'll let you know how it affects you in your chart. But this is just a general explanation of how Mercury retrograde will affect everyone. Thanks. Goodbye.